Hey, how's it going, folks? Welcome back here to another update, and welcome back to a Tuesday. It is February 27th, 2024, about 12:05 p.m. here, California time. And latest activity here on the Earthquake 3D globe. See what we got. Looks like a 3.8 over here across the area of the Mediterranean. This comes after, looks like a little bit of movement here overnight, including a 4.6 in this area. Looks like just outside the Turkey area. And a little bit of movement specifically around the Turkey region here with some 2s and 3s coming in. First, going to cover activity around the Iceland area. We are looking at a interesting time here because we are at the level of what we had seen the last couple eruptions here in terms of magma accumulation here. They have a map, a little graph here stating the most recent information here. And of course, in the red line is going to be the latest status. These previous eruptions here, this is the days since the beginning of the inflation, the amount of time that had passed prior to eruptive fissure activity taking place. So we are getting very close. I think we have a couple more days to go, but we are getting very close here in terms of seeing further eruptive activity there across the area of Iceland. And basically it's going to probably kick up in the same region that we've seen the last couple eruptions. Accumulated magma beneath the Svartsengi reaching same amount as prior to previous eruptions. An eruption could start with very little warning, even less than about 30 minutes, but it seems as though we've had about an hour to 30 minutes or so in the last couple eruptions with intense earthquake activity leading up to the eruptive activity in the region. So there's a little window of opportunity to get out of there if you're within that region, but it could be even less than 30 minutes out there. Eruption location is most likely in the area between these regions right here, the Hagafell and the Slingerfell region. It is possible that dike intrusions occur without resulting in a volcanic eruption, but we'll continue to watch that. Obviously, when we got further inflation going on below the area and earthquake activity out here, it's obviously leading towards a soon-to-be fissure eruption out here. And this is a region, once again, let me show you guys. This is kind of a little big map, but this will work. Last couple eruptions, of course, Grindavik down here, we did have that little fissure open up. Most of the earthquake activity is around the previous eruptions earlier this month, and the one before that in the area around Slingerfell and Hagafell within this area right here. Now, it's possible here, definitely possible, we could see things further up north and potentially further south as well. So we're not out of the woods yet in terms of migration of future fissure activity, but it looks as though most of the earthquake activity confined here to the region where the latest eruptive activity took place here this month. Looking at the earthquake activity here on this scale, last 12 hours showing about 38 earthquakes here. And again, there's there's a little separate region way over here across this rift zone, but the area around Grindavik, specifically showing not a whole lot here in the last 12 hours. That other map you just seen was probably the last 24 or 36 hours, but we'll continue to watch that and of course keep an eye on further earthquake activity and movement here across these divergent zones. Alright, looking at the USGS map here, California lighting up down here across Southern California in the last hour. A couple earthquakes, including a 2.4 just outside Porterville area. That is up against the southern edge here of the Sierra Nevada mountains. Quite a few fault systems up here, but doesn't look like anything major going on. Just a handful of smaller quakes out here this morning, including one on the Garlock Fault shear zone. That's going to be this section right here, kind of sheared across the plate boundary, which is going to be the San Andreas Fault here in the darker red line. Southern California, further down south anyway, looks like they had a couple 2s here this morning. Not a whole lot in terms of swarming activity out here across the San Andreas Fault for now, but we'll continue to watch that. Up into the Pacific Northwest, not a whole lot going on up here. A couple 1s, including some explosions up here, probably some quarry blasts. The area of Idaho, here's some of the aftershock activity from yesterday's earthquake. Looks like we've seen a couple more 2s and even a 3-pointer just after midnight there in the area that seen that 4.9 yesterday. Yellowstone National Park, one little lonesome earthquake out here. I don't think we got a lot of earthquake activity, but let's check this area and see. That's going to be the earthquake in question right about here. But there is a handful of smaller quakes on this map as well. Mostly localized here to the borehole area, B208 station. This movement up here looks like it's some type of outside interference. If this was earthquake activity, it would show up on a nearby station, which it's not. I don't see it showing up at all across this area or any other graphs out here. All right, looking back here across the rest of the states, Texas, man, Texas definitely getting in on some earthquake activity out here recently. It's been quite the active month out here. Let's check out the last 30 days of earthquake activity. For the state of Texas, got about 550 earthquakes. That's quite a bit. How does that relate to California? Well, California sits on the plate boundary, right? Portion of it being on one side of the plate and the other. So 3,000 something earthquakes out here. That's quite a difference, but you know, Texas, that's still a lot of earthquake activity out here for the Texas region. And the majority of this activity stirring up out in the oil fields and oil pumping operations out there. Across the Middle America Trench down here, most of this activity here from last night. Doesn't look like we've seen any further activity on the moderate or large size there across the Middle America Trench. A handful of smaller quakes, though, in this area. South America region looks to be the area of interest today in terms of uptick across the Peru-Chile Trench. Getting a pretty decent amount of swarming going on here. Quite a few fours, and as you've seen on the Earthquake 3D globe, a lot of smaller quakes in there as well. So we'll continue to watch the South America region here for some further movement. New Zealand still seeing deep activity here being triggered underneath the North Island area. I believe that's associated with the Hikurangi subduction zone. That's quite a bit of movement taking place here in the last 30 days or so underneath this area. I believe that adding strain upstream. A couple surface earthquakes as well along the plate boundary. We'll continue to watch that because that deeper movement quake activity could be leading to something bigger around the region. Across Papua New Guinea and the Solomon Islands area, let's see what we got. We got 2 earthquakes out here. 3 of these after midnight, so a little bit of uptick here across the region. A couple 5s stirring up. And looks like Japan's getting a little active out here as well. Some of this from yesterday, although the latest one, a 4.1, fairly deep here into the Japan Trench. Plate boundary over here, but obviously underneath this region, you get the subduction zones. Continue to watch that. These deeper quakes definitely building up something, I feel. That could lead to some much larger activity. The region of major concern, Kuril Kamchatka, not a whole lot going on up here for now, but that's a major subduction zone that hasn't really seen any large-scale activity in quite a while. All right, Hawaii. Let's run out here to Hawaii real quick, see if anything major is going on. Some slight uptick there from yesterday and a little bit today, mostly around the Pahala area. But let's just double-check that there, make sure we're not missing anything out there. A lot of times they won't show the earthquakes that are taking place out here. The tilt meter looks like we're dropping here in terms of tilt. Let's go to the deformation page. Just double check that and see what we have. There's our 2-day summit inflation dropping slightly. Not a huge drop in relation to the overall picture. Here's the last 30 days here. It's been kind of level. Mellowing out here slightly and leveling out since we've seen that major displacement. You can kind of see that blue line here hidden behind this graph. We had been at the highest level of inflation since 2018, but that quickly changed with a huge drop. Displacement of magma being sent off to the southwest rift zone. And, days after that displacement, we followed like a trail of activity stretching out towards the Loihi Seamount. So I assume that magma definitely positioned down here across the reservoir within this area. We'll continue to watch that, but for now things are just kind of steady. All right, Alaska area. Denali seen some regional earthquake up here, including a 2.1. A handful of earthquakes around Anchorage as well through the Cook Inlet. Mostly smaller microquakes. A couple 3s in there though as well. For the rest of the globe, let's see what we got out here across the region. So we got the activity coming in now to the Mediterranean. Iceland seen some activity. I just showed you guys that. A little bit of movement out here across this area south around the Azores, it looks like. But we'll watch for some further earthquake activity up here around the divergent zones that could enhance and intensify the activity out here in terms of the eruptive potential around Iceland. All right, space weather activity. I know it looks like they kind of dropped the flare threat out here from it was up around 30% down to a 10% chance. I still think 3590 here. That's this massive sunspot region. Does harbor some potential for some flaring. It can change pretty much in the blink of an eye. It does look like it's getting a little further growth here around this region, so we'll continue to watch that maybe for some further strong flaring and maybe eruptive activity in terms of a CME. Quite a few M flares and quite a few X flares from 3590 over the last week or so, but none of those flares had anything of value in terms of a CME. But we'll continue to watch it. It is facing off here towards the northwest side of the sun, northwestern quadrant of the sun, and I think right now it could still be geo-effective, but it's got to do something soon. Otherwise, it's going to be out of sight, out of mind here very soon. Far as these sunspots here, they're all relatively stable, not a whole lot of growth. I was looking at this sunspot last night. Just shows some minimal enhancement, but really not a whole lot to look at here compared to what we've been seeing over the past week with 3590. Far as any major auroras in the forecast, well, doesn't look like it, but we did have a little enhancement kick up here, almost to the G1 class storm last night. Looks like maybe late last night there, but kind of popped up out of the blue. Weren't really forecasting that. There's no forecast here for any geomagnetic storming, but we've seen a little glancing hit there. Maybe sparked up the aurora slightly. But as far as anything in the forecast, not a whole lot for now. All right, Storm Prediction Center. Today's a day to be weather aware out there across this area of the country. They have increased the threat level in terms of severe weather potential across this region with an enhanced zone, which is getting up there. And that is due to an elevated 10% chance for tornado activity, and that is in the dashed area as well. That region, Louisville, Evansville, Owensboro, Kentucky area, and a portion, again, like I mentioned up here in Illinois, that region has the potential to see an EF2 to EF5 tornado within about 25 miles of a point, at least a 10%. So heads up if you're out there in this region. Overall, if you're in this green zone as well, whole area needs to be on guard here today for some severe weather. And obviously, tornado threat is high out here today. Wind threat from these thunderstorms that will be popping up as well as just the general wind gusts out here do pose a threat for some damaging winds. 30% chance out there. Also a big-time hail threat in this area. 30% zone, the most likely region for some large damaging hail, 2 inches or larger within the hatched area. So, goodness, Chicago and Indianapolis, heads up. Big-time severe weather activity taking place there today. And we'll check out the NAM model out here. We're waiting on the arrival of this colder air as we put this into motion here. Keep an eye on this. Let me bring this down just a little bit too big. All right, that should work. That colder air is going to arrive and intermix here, bringing up thunderstorm activity. You can see later this afternoon and evening time period, we get those storms popping up. And that's, obviously that's when you get that severe weather potential. It looks like it will form into some type of squall line later after midnight or so and into tomorrow morning. But yeah, that's a little dangerous area out here today for severe weather potential. As far as the West Coast goes, well, we're getting some colder air coming down here right now. It's got about 58 degrees here. It's a pretty nice drop since yesterday. Snow and rain headed to the West Coast as we head into Thursday and Friday. That's going to linger around here for a couple days along the West Coast, stir up some more severe weather out there. Looks like early next week across this region as another band of colder air reaches out there. We do have a little precipitation maker early next week as well for California. and maybe a couple more behind that. We will continue to watch it. Of course, it is in that time period, folks, here where severe weather is, kind of a killer out here in terms of the hazards. So definitely stay weather aware out here across this area today. You can kind of see that cold front area right here, a little bit of it. Again, later on through the day and evening, this area will be hammered with severe thunderstorms and whatnot. So just a heads up. Looks like some lightning thunderstorms out here around Toronto. All right, folks, have a good day. We'll catch you guys back here a little bit later on this evening. Not a whole lot going on in terms of current seismic activity here across the seismograph stations. They're fairly quiet looking. We'll catch you guys back out here a little bit later on this evening. Take care, folks.